An ad hoc video coming at you this time. I wanted to get this out before the 4th of July holiday. Happy birthday, America. So we're recording just a couple days before that as we're quickly nearing the release of Set 2. My wife and I have been testing a whole bunch, a variety of different things. Well, a variety of different things getting smashed into Sabine and then summarily getting smashed. So let's talk about what's happening early on. Now, I spent some time on stream last night discussing this already, so I'm just going to talk about a few different lists. We've been trying, as mentioned, a whole bunch of things and just throwing them at the wall to kind of see what is working and what isn't. Just get a general feel for things. It's still early on, so we're just trying the most obvious stuff, which is really how I tend to approach things. Look for the most powerful things, look to updates to known quantities, that sort of thing, so that you have a more stable testing environment. With that out of the way, let's talk about a few different lists. And if you're interested in hearing more about this, either drop by the live stream link in the description or let me know in the comments what you want to see for these things and what your thoughts are. Now, I only just started recording the actual results, and I'll show you a screenshot of a sample of them so far. It's not a whole lot of data at this point. We're, as mentioned, just running a bunch of stuff into Sabine. And Sabine is the elephant in the room at this point, which is not surprising. Aggro typically performs better as people are refining lists, getting more comfortable with the cards, all that kind of stuff. However, two major components came out of Set 2, and that, of course, is Poe and Wrecker. Both of these are absolutely bonkers. Like, I don't want to say broken because I think that's thrown around way too much, but they are absolutely busted. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to say broken because it's early and we don't know yet, but there are so many games that are immediately decided the second that you ECL one of these two into play, either one. And then in addition, you get access to timely intervention, which means that you have possibly 4 ECLs, your actual ECL, and then the other 3. Sabine can pour on an enormous amount of damage before you had access to these cards. But now, whether it's slinging extra damage with Poe so that you can one-shot a Boba, or do just a Wrecker to nuke their Sentinel on the when played and then ambush into something else, or sometimes you just don't want to nuke something because you actually want the body out there. And what we found is Sentinels are somewhat of a liability because of the overwhelm. Yes, Wrecker will take some damage back, but at the end of the day, you crash into the Sentinel and deal 6 damage because your opponent was trying to trade favorably on earlier turns, or maybe you didn't give them the chance and you ran into their stuff. You can set all this up and continue to pressure damage in ways that you couldn't before. There's a lot more direct damage, and that's before you consider things like Daring Raid, which maybe won't make the cut. I don't know. We'll see. But Sabine right now is public enemy number 1, and I haven't really found a clean way to address it just yet. Now, moving on from Sabine, let's talk about some of the other things we've been messing around with. Boba Yellow. I played this a ton in Set 1. I loved the deck and simultaneously hated the deck. I'm on record, both in videos and in person, as saying it never felt great. And it honestly never did. The reason I say that is it constantly felt that if my opponent had made one slightly different play, I would never even be in the game, let alone have a chance to win it. And that's kind of what it felt like in almost literally every matchup. Sabine was really the only exception where it kind of felt like, unless the Sabine player played perfect, I played poorly, and I drew poorly, it was very difficult for them to win because between cunning and other effects, you just completely blank them on multiple turns. You have almost as fast of a clock. That all felt like it is beginning to change in Set 2. At least initially. We'll have to see, because this list among all of them is the one that's the most in flux because there's so many new toys. But full disclosure, I'm not impressed with a lot of the new toys. I mean, there's DL-44 Blaster, there's Forlom, there's Zuckuss, there's Toro, there's DJ, there's this, there's that. There's all kinds of new things that could possibly make the list, and it very quickly gets very bloated. And you end up with a much less coherent experience. So I'm going to keep trying this. I personally, if I was going to an event tomorrow, I would not want to play Sabine or Boba because I expect a lot of people they're going to come to the conclusion those are strong decks. They gain a bunch. Let me beat them, which is what I'm trying to do. And I mentioned this on stream and in other places, the whole poker levels theory of level 0 be I'm just playing the best deck. Level 1 would be I'm playing the deck that beats the best deck. Level 2 would be I'm playing the deck that beats the deck that beats the best deck. But eventually you start wrapping back around and you get the rock, paper, scissors meta and the rotation there. So trying to predict these early metas is very difficult. And early testing was thinking, oh, Boba's still great into Sabine, but as of late, it's been looking dicier and dicier. We'll see how it turns out. Now, beyond that, I've been trying a lot of mono Palpatine because I liked that deck. I thought it looked cool. It also got some new toys, several new toys. Phase 3 Dark Trooper, you could try and include Maul if you really wanted to, but you already have Vader, and I'm not sure that you really want Maul. Depending on whether you are utilizing ECL versus Command Center or other 30-point bases, you could, of course, try the new Elephant Guy. And beyond that, you also get cute toys like Salacious Crumb or Black Sun Starfighter, which, of course, can be fetched off of Vader. Enterprising Lackeys, Timely Intervention. There's a lot of new things. Even the new Gamorrean Retainer and Scanning Officer as early plays, or potentially, in the Scanning Officer's case, a really disruptive game-winning time walk, whether it's on the early turns or later turns. Any of these could change the game. But right now, Sabine's a problem. And my biggest issue that I found at this stage is the level of overwhelm. To the point where not to beat the dead horse with Sabine, but it kind of feels as though maybe you abandon ground entirely and just don't give them things to ambush. That was kind of the strategy for, say, the Vader decks from, I guess, the early third of set 1. I don't know, the end of the early third of set 1. Whatever. Who cares? That's not the important part. But the early Vader lists were trying to abandon that ground game so that your opponent didn't have very many options to ECL into, if any. And maybe that's an option, because right now putting, say, a Phase 3 Dark Trooper out there only to have it get blown out by a Wrecker to clear the path, or Wrecker just crashes into it to both clear the path for the rest of their team and trample over for extra damage, feels horrendous. Oh, and by the way, if he's doing that, he's probably blowing up something else. So bad times all around. Regardless, I do want to try Palpatine some more. Jabba's kind of in the same category for me, whether it's Jabba Red or Jabba Yellow. And I just can't quite get them to go toe-to-toe with Sabine right now in a way. Like, it's probably always going to be a bad matchup, but hopefully it will be better than it is right now. Lastly, I do want to talk about Kira. I don't know how much play or excitement Kira has gotten outside of certain competitive circles. I don't know who Kira is, to be perfectly honest, within the realm of the Star Wars universe. But this deck list is something I was very interested in because, while I have heard about these Krennic lists and I have seen them at a few showdowns, they haven't exactly put up in my area the numbers that I would expect based on what people were saying. But Kira functions in a similar way and presents a significantly different threat that you can play the same sort of stuff, but still come at it from a different, more unique angle. And I think there are advantages to allow to set up for, say, an early overwhelming barrage. But as I'm finding, even in those scenarios, if your opponent's wise to it, they can set up so that you either can't barrage because they just clear the Kira, or they manipulate your board in such a way that it isn't as oppressive as it hypothetically could be. But sometimes you do just take over where you flipper, you have all their health, as well as yours, of course, and then you barrage or whatever, and you take over, and then the game's locked up. I don't know if this can't, or if I can't get it to consistently beat Sabine. I'm not sure if I don't think I would play it. But it is dominating Boba right now, which the Krennic decks were supposed to. And it seems that this is just continuing it. So if that continues to be the case, guess what? It's going to be another bad time for Boba. So now if your former good matchup is bad and your bad matchup continues to be bad or worse, it's not great. It's not looking fantastic. We'll have to see. But overall, a lot of what I've seen thus far is a lot of the relationships between decks from set 1 seem to be getting exacerbated rather than becoming closer. So more rigid rock, paper, scissors, instead of having them be tighter matchups where everybody gets tools, therefore everything's more powerful, and then instead of being 60-40, it becomes closer to 50-50. What I'm seeing is the opposite, that 60-40 matchups are now becoming like 90-10s. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit. This is also very early on in my investigation, so we'll have to see. Tried to keep this short, but it ended up going on a little bit longer, and I'm going to have a lot of work to do in editing. Hopefully, when you see the finished product, it looks better than it did, or sounded better than it did when I was recording it. However, let me know what your initial thoughts are if you've been proxying stuff up and been trying it out, or what you're excited about, whether it's on the other Market Watch videos or it's on my early assessments of the meta. Like I said, this is still very early. I reserve the right to change my opinion. But right now, this is where I'm at, and we have a lot more games to play. Certainly things aren't figured out, and I'm looking forward to trying to iron out what the Set 2 meta is going to look like. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time for more Random's Thoughts.